The Correctional Services Department has honored top matric achievers at Westville Prison in Durban. Inmates from various correctional services schools obtained a 77% matric pass rate, with 4 schools hitting the 100% mark. We're joined now by Minister Michael Masuta, who joins us now from our Durban studios. And Minister, this is pretty impressive. These are people who are serving time and they are able to sit their matric exams and actually pass well. What is the profile of the passes and the quality of the passes that we are seeing from the prison schools?
Well, the profile is not bad at all. Quite a number of full exemption, bachelor's passes. I think they make up the majority. And of course, this is the highest, but for the one single year, I think it was 2012, where we had 79%. So we're just 2% shy of the national pass rate.
And this comes in the context of, this happens in the context of our correctional policy, which emphasizes rehabilitation of the offender over issues to do with punishment. Of course, punishment remains a factor, but really, where possible, would like to rehabilitate the offenders. How much appetite is there for this kind of service for inmates in our various prisons for people to complete their education, particularly matric?
Most of the formal schools, which is a program that was only initiated in 2009 with the first school then, full-time school, and of course then leading to 2012 when the first matriculants came through, because the schools start from standard 8 or grade 10 to 12. We now have about 14 of these schools, of which 13 set for matric. So it's come a long way to where we are now. But remember that overall we have at any given time approximately 10,700 inmates participating in various educational and training programs, ranging from adult education and training to TVET, formally registered training programs that include both vocational and tertiary learning, all the way to master's degrees. You'd recall that sometime last year we had an event at our Boksburg Center, where a whole host of inmates were receiving all manner of tertiary qualifications in particular. So we regard education and training as critical for rehabilitation as well, because education does change a person's worldview and outlook in life, changes their character and has a very positive influence on a person's sense of self-worth, over and above equipping them with the necessary base for them to mount a whole variety of skills, including specialized skills. So we think that there is a lot to this from the perspective that you alluded to, where we have moved away from running prisons, emphasizing on punishment, to running correctional centers, where we promote rehabilitation and eventual social reintegration.
But I can't imagine that it, I actually imagine that it must be pretty difficult to sit for your matric exams in a correctional center because of the conditions that have been objectively found to exist in our prisons. I mean, the Inspectorate General for Prisons finding appalling conditions in some of these institutions last year, including issues to do with overcrowding, some of which is well over 50%, and in some instances double the number that institutions are supposed to hold, infrastructure challenges, and issues to do with mental health care provision for offenders in our prisons.
That is true. The rate of offending in South Africa is relatively high, and much of it is to do with the underlying socioeconomic disparities that are in part part of our legacy of spatial engineering that dates back to apartheid. If you look at your areas where offending is highest, you see that linked to the socioeconomic conditions under which people live. If you take your Cape Flats, townships like Gugulethu, Khayelitsha, Nyanga, you'd equally find the levels of crime, especially violent crime, much higher in those socioeconomically depraved areas as compared to your more affluent areas. So it's very much tied to the underlying socioeconomic challenges that confront us. We believe that education and skilling is a powerful catalyst that can lift people out of poverty and social marginalization. And we believe that our own inmates, who may have been driven by those conditions into the world of crime, stand a better chance upon completing their stint with us and having acquired these skills. But yes, the conditions in our correctional facilities are not in all instances. The levels of overcrowding varies from center to center, but the aggregate nationally is that we are overcrowded by 37%. In other words, we are 137% on aggregate full in our prisons. In some areas, of course, way in excess of 200% occupancy, which is way above the norm set in the Western Cape judgment, commonly known as the Saldanha judgment, which put the norm at 150 maximum, specifically in relation to Pollsmoor. So we've been trying to use that as a yardstick to try and push the numbers elsewhere. Below the 150% mark.
So just a final one then, Minister, and hopefully a quick answer from you. The problems you outline, coupled with issues to do, for instance, with mental health provision, which is a real challenge in our prison systems, but also the deaths due to unnatural causes, including the issues of suicide. What is the solution here? Do we need more prisons? How many more prisons do we need to have built?
I wish we could transplant the 19 prisons I understand closed down in the Netherlands because of shortage of inmates back into South Africa. Reality is that yes, we need more infrastructure so that we can acquire more bed space. We have a plan for the next 10 years to yield another 18,000 bed spaces. But the real solution is that South Africans need to reduce the levels of violence, and dare I also add greed, in our society, so that we can begin to see the numbers of accused persons, convicted persons come down through our court system, which will also translate into the number of inmates in our correctional facilities also coming down, rather than hope against hope that more resources will be made available in the face of many other competing challenges in our society. As far as the challenge of mental health, it's a challenge which the Department of Health is also confronted with, and the spillage there results in us at corrections having to pick up the can.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. That is Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Michael Masuta, joining us from our Durban studios.